I really want to thank you all for coming out today. I'm reminded of that scene from Jaws. We should have gotten a bigger boat.
Yeah, you should have.
Listen, I know there's an old Chinese curse, they say, may you live in interesting times. And these are no doubt the most interesting times, certainly I've ever lived through, and probably all of you as well. And the good news is that our institutions as Americans are the best ever designed in the history of mankind to resolve the kind of disputes that our country is going through right now. And it's all based on this uniquely American view of sovereignty. I mean, if you think about it, every other country in the world, sovereignty comes from the government. Powers and rights flow from the government to the people. We Americans have a completely different view of the notion of sovereignty. In the American view, the American people are the sovereigns. Their rights come from what the founders called the laws of nature and of nature's God, and we establish governments to protect those rights. And the power flows from us through our Constitution and is loaned to a lot of hired help. That's what every elected official is, from the president down to the local mosquito abatement district. We're hired help. We hire the help in each election. And then we watch that help, and we discuss among ourselves as the American people how that help is doing and whether we ought to keep them or kick them out in the next election.
Kick them out. Kick them out. Kick them out.
That's for next year. That's for next year. Right now we need a discussion. Right now we have a discussion about the future of our country. And I've often said, in all the debates that go on back in Washington, in fact, in any hall of government, think about this. That's not the real debate. That's just a reflection of the real debate. The real debate is the one that goes on over backyard fences and family dinner tables and meetings like this. And it's upon the outcome of that discussion that the future of our country is always decided. And no matter how difficult the issues we confront, I think it comes down to this. As long as we Americans are talking with each other and not shouting at each other, things are going to be just fine. So with that, I know you all have a lot to say. Usually I'd start with a discussion of what's going on in Washington. I think you folks have an awful lot you want to discuss, so the rest of the hour is yours. So Joel's got a microphone. Get his attention, and he'll come over here.
Joel, I have a question.
If everybody can keep their hands raised and not shout, I will do my best to get to as many people as possible. I appreciate the cooperation.
Thank you. Hi, Governor McClintock. Representative McClintock. So I am here because I would like to share a very important story, which involves my accident and my disability. And I would also like to follow it up with a question at the end. So I'm just going to read this to you, and it's actually a letter that I have sent to you. So, Congressman McClintock, I want to share this story today regarding the Affordable Health Care Act that saved my life 5 years ago.
How about a question?
No, this is a discussion. Go right
At
ahead.
the age of 22 years old, I was the victim of a pedestrian hit and run as I was attempting to cross the road in a crosswalk. I sustained life-threatening injuries as well as complete paralysis from the waist down, making my life 10 times harder and 10 times more expensive in regard to healthcare services. Supplies and equipment that I require are very expensive. And these things that I require allow me to live a healthy and independent quality of life. A few months before my accident, I was uninsured. And I was uninsured simply because I could not afford it. Even though I worked 3 jobs, yet I was only left with a mere $30 to spare after the first week of the month after paying all of my bills. After the Affordable Health Care Act came into effect, my mother was able to add me back onto her plan, even though I was not a student, a full-time student at the time. I realized later on that it had to have been an act of God that allowed me to be placed back onto my mom's health insurance only 5 months before being hit by a car and dragged 30 feet down the road, which nearly killed me. But I survived, and I owe that to the amazing care that I received by the doctors, surgeons, and nurses that I required to survive. Amen. If I had not had my mother's insurance to cover my health care costs, I would have been over $500,000 in debt just from the first 3 days. Imagine realizing that you would never walk again for the rest of your life, and then also realizing that you were also in enormous debt that you would never ever be able to repay in your lifetime. That would have been my situation if I was denied access to my choice of health. That would have been my situation if it wasn't for the ACA. I also now have a pre-existing condition, and the fact that I can't be denied access to my choice of health insurance, the fact that I can't be denied access to my choice of health insurance,
You can do it.
Okay, take your time.
You're doing great.
is an incredible lifesaver to me. And considering the fact that one day I will no longer be able to be on my mother's insurance, I will have to be covered on my own. Since you and many other Republicans want to rip these things away from us, what do you expect people like me to do? What do you expect seniors and people with disabilities with low income to do if you take away our Medi-Cal, our Medicaid, that we rely on to literally stay alive? Our country was founded based on John Locke's philosophy of natural rights, where every natural person of the land has a God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, if a citizen of the United States is denied the right to affordable health coverage, they are in fact being denied their right to life. Without affordable access to health care, no person could afford life-saving treatment in this country if they were seriously ill. If you truly care about your constituents, I hope that you will take these issues into account before you vote to repeal a law that has covered millions of people, many of whom now have the access to treatment they never had before due to the fact that they simply couldn't afford it before. So I ask you, McClintock, again, what do you expect vulnerable people like me to do if you guys choose to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act?
Well, we don't want to... We don't want to leave anybody in the lurch, and that's why I've stood up in our conference and said we need to be very careful that when we do this, we have a better health system than the one we found. And I came to the conclusion a long time ago. After 8 years, everybody in the country has had an up close and personal experience with Obamacare. Some people have done very well with it. Other people have not. It's been the prominent issue in the last 4 election cycles. And the people have spoken very clearly on this. So I'm not going to go into whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Everyone's already formed their opinion on that. But as we move to repeal Obamacare, it is very important that we address the underlying issues that spawned Obamacare. And that includes a package of bills that have been proposed not only by Congressman Tom Price, but I think an even more extensive package. Let's not yell at each other.
We're not. We're
by the Republican Study Committee.
Why not?
That would provide Americans a much wider range of options. For example, we give all of these tax breaks to companies so that they can buy health care for their employees that their employees have to live with, whether they're responsive to their needs or not. They lose their job, they lose their health care. Why don't we provide those same tax advantages to the employees themselves so they can afford to go out and purchase a plan that best meets their own needs, that they can own, that they can take from job to job, and that they can fire if it no longer. Anyway, I will make you this promise. We don't want to leave anyone in the lurch, and we're going to do our very best to assure that the health system that replaces Obamacare is going to be better for the vast majority of Americans.
I'll make it short. My concern, I'm Trudy Gonzalez from Roseville, California. My concern is pre-existing clause is a must. I've heard high-risk pools as the solution, and that doesn't work. They can't be funded. The states haven't control of it, run out of money. So would your plan, the better plan, include the pre-existing clause to make sure that every American is afforded health care?
Well, actually, I think the high-risk pools have worked very well over the years, but here's the problem. Here's the big problem with them. Here's the big problem with them. This was about 3 years ago. A guy had left his job, therefore lost his health coverage. He's in the private market, can't find a policy because he's got a pre-existing condition, bursitis. If you're over 45, you've got some nuisance pre-existing condition, almost certainly. Couldn't get insurance for it. He says, I don't care about the bursitis. That's a nuisance. I'm concerned about illnesses that could kill me or bankrupt me. Write me a plan for everything else, and I'll take care of the bursitis myself. And the response was, we'd love to write you that plan, but we can't. It's against the law. If we open up the market again so that people have the freedom to choose the plans so that nuisance pre-existing conditions we can simply write around so they can get coverage for everything else, that boils down the problem to a very manageable level. The problem is the law today does not boil down.
Who decides? Who decides?
The patient, the consumer decides.
You ask the insurance company.
You go on private.
Yeah.
You guys go on fire.
By the way, I'm
You
a
first.
Kaiser patient myself, if that's any help. Go ahead.
You first.
Thank you for being here. Some of your colleagues have decided not to show up at town hall meetings, so we really appreciate your being here so that we can listen to what we have to say. The Dodd-Frank Act was passed to protect Americans from unscrupulous banking practices. The Dodd-Frank Act. Do you agree with President Trump that Dodd-Frank should be reviewed, by which I assume he means eliminated? Yes or no?
Yes, I opposed it, and for some very good reasons. It institutionalizes the whole notion of too big to fail that is at part of the root of our many problems today. Community banks are closing all over the country. The too big to fail banks are the ones that are given all the advantages by government. For that reason alone, we need to repeal Dodd-Frank.
Take it back.
No. Okay, you say it doesn't make sense. Let me explain what's going on. The too big to fail banks have all of the advantages of government backing. Community banks can't compete under those circumstances, so it's the little banks that are getting squeezed out, and we're getting fewer and fewer community banks and bigger national banks, and that's awful.
Regulated.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I have one comment on your Affordable Care Act as far as what was discussed behind closed session with you. There wasn't a talk about how we would afford your funding of having the employer have a credit, and that would be to have middle-class Americans raise taxes on middle-class Americans in order to give the credit to the employers.
No.
And that was during the recording?
Yeah, no. What we want to do is provide refundable tax credits for every employee.
Well, one of them was in a recording that was given to the Washington Post, on January 27th.
Yeah.
That was a suggestion. That was one of the suggestions that would.
It wasn't my suggestion.
No, it was not your suggestion, but it was a suggestion. So I just want to make that comment that it was a possibility. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the expanding gun access to the mentally impaired. I was a psychiatric nurse in both inpatient hospital here in Roseville and in the outpatient mental facility for the county. There is a bill now, or there is a law now, that a person who has been hospitalized for a severe mental impairment has to go through a instant check, criminal check, before they would be issued a gun. My experience with schizophrenic patients or patients who have danger to self, danger to others, a lot of them, a gun in their possession would not be a good thing. They really have voices that tell them the government is after them, someone's telling them to kill someone. And
I get letters from such people every now and then. I get it.
However, you voted yes.
Yeah, well, let me, okay, finish the question.
I would not feel safe. And this was just 2 days ago. You voted yes to expand that gun access. And I don't know if you have ever been around a person with schizophrenia, even if they're taking medication, the voice is still there. They may be dulled a little bit, but the voice, and most of the killings that have happened here in the United States are because of a person with some mental illness. So I'm asking you, why would you ever think that it would be okay for, or in anyone's best interest, either the person with mental illness, their family, or anyone around the community here in Roseville, or Rockland, or anyone in your district, why would it be okay for you to vote yes, that they could have a handgun or any type of weapon?
Yeah, why? Tell us why crazy people should have guns.
Even with constitutional rights, you can only be deprived of those rights through due process of law. Now, we have a very simple process.
Oh, great. That's really great.
You're okay with having your fundamental rights repealed by a bureaucrat?
Oh, yes!
Okay, well, I think most Americans would
Trump's
disagree
going to
with
do it
that.
anyway.
Yeah, we'll find out in October. We'll find out May 2nd.
There is a very simple... Okay, let me answer your question. Let me answer your question. There's a very simple process judicially when someone is being determined to be a danger to themselves or to others. If that classification, if a court where the individual has the right to defend themselves makes that determination, I'm fine with that. But that's not what's going on. What's going on is anybody in this particular case who is on a disability according to Social Security, all the guns in their house are removed under the under Obama's illegal executive order. This simply rescinds that order. You also mentioned health care. I need to make it clear. I stood up to the leadership and said we have to be very careful. And this is just a practical matter. We all know that when we replace Obamacare, we're going to be judged on the quality of that work. We watched the Democrats lose 67 U.S. House seats because they didn't listen to people.
What's your
My
plan?
point is we need to listen to them and be sure that the system that we replace Obamacare with is better for the American people.
What's your plan?
You have no plan.
You have no plan.
You have no plan.
Tom, using that logic, we might as well let kids buy
Folks, let's not shout at each other. Let's talk with each other.
We have to shout. You got a microphone. We don't.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I do have to respond to this because I'm a clinical psychologist. I've had 5150 authority. It's very hard to get people 5150 in California, which is involuntary hospitalization. It may be too late. It may be after the fact. Look at Gabby Giffords. These people are out there. I don't want anybody's rights taken away. I've actually done disability evaluations. It's very hard to, I hardly ever gave anybody disability because the criteria is very strict. So if they've got it, you need to really look at that and trust that whoever did the evaluation really knew what they were doing and knows that that person would probably not be a good candidate for a gun. That's not my question.
A fundamental principle of our free country is that you cannot be deprived of your rights without due process of law. That, to me, is a very bright line that separates a nation of laws from a nation of men. And that's the principle that I follow in all of these rights, from privacy to Second Amendment rights to own firearms to defend yourself.
I can also tell you that for 12 years I did mentally disorder offender evaluations for the state of California. I've seen thousands of mentally ill offenders in Folsom State Prison and all around the area. I've had guys who killed their mother because the voices told them to do so. If that man had not had a gun, he wouldn't have been able to kill his mother. So I understand that we have rights, and I also understand that people are dangerous when they have a severe mental illness. So anyway, speaking of mental illness, I am terrified about Mr. Trump's behavior. I literally haven't slept every night. I believe he is mentally ill. I didn't bring my daughter but I can tell you the disorders are narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and after the inauguration, delusional disorder, and look it up. I don't take this lightly, and I'm terrified. He has also not divested himself of his vast holdings. And not being transparent about to whom he owes money, which leaves him and our country vulnerable to blackmail from other countries. You and our Congress have several constitutional avenues available to you to remove him from office, including the Emoluments Clause and the 25th Amendment, Section 4. And, everything else pales because we have to remove him. So what are you doing to begin impeachment proceedings for Mr. Trump? Business dealings which are putting us all at risk.
I understand. You do not like Donald Trump. And by the way, I sympathize with you. There have been elections where our side has lost. And I would ask you to consider this. Just a word of friendly advice. Remember that there were many people in America who disagreed with and feared Barack Obama just as vigorously as you disagree and fear Donald Trump. But we didn't shout down people.
She didn't say that.
We didn't riot. We didn't start secession movements. What we did was to engage our fellow Americans in a discussion. And you might want to consider that.
Please quiet down.
You might want to consider that as a model to follow to address your concerns.
Well, Barack Obama was a constitutional law professor and attorney. He knew how to run a country. Donald Trump does not know how to run a country because he doesn't have a law degree. He doesn't even have an MBA from Wharton, although he professes he does. I looked it up. And he is mentally ill, and Barack Obama was not mentally ill.
I remember a lot of people on the extreme right saying that he was. That's and by the way, there were many of us that pushed back hard on that. And the reason was, and if any of you attended my town hall meetings over these past 8 years, there was almost always somebody who would stand up and challenge Barack Obama's citizenship. And I always pushed back very, very hard on that. Just as hard as I would push back on your statements today. I don't think they're responsible. And I think that you're losing sight of how you influence the American people. Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, when you argue with your emotions, you will never fail to delight your supporters, infuriate your adversaries, and alienate that vast middle ground you're seeking to persuade.
Stop patronizing us.
So I was just offered that as friendly advice, having been just as disappointed in the election of 2008 as you are in the election of 2016. And that will take a look at how the country shifted over those 8 years. And it wasn't through riots, it wasn't through this kind of shouting, it was through a home debate among our fellow citizens.
Yeah, the Tea Party was really quiet.
Talk. My name is Nicole Lutz-Muller. I live up in Tahoe City. I'm an environmental scientist, and I work in data visualization down in the Delta for the headwaters for the water source of California. And our district covers the majority of the headwaters for the water supply source for about 2/3 of the state of California. And we live in an area that's also covered in national forest lands that have to be heavily managed to maintain adequate water supply and water quality for the entire state. You have come out in favor of, I've heard, clear cutting, deregulating our national forests. You've taken money from Sierra Pacific Industries, which is one of the biggest timber companies in the state and in the West. And I'm curious as to what your policy is on how we can appropriately manage our forests with the over 100 million dead trees that we have to sustain our water supply for the state and maintain water quality without clear cutting and to manage our bark beetle issues.
Well, first of all, I've never advocated clear cutting. But I do advocate the scientific management of our forests. As you know, your acreage in the Sierra normally supports, depending upon the topography, between 10 and 80 trees per acre. The current density is 266 trees per acre. We used to properly thin and manage these forests so that the trees had plenty of room to grow strong and healthy. They could resist drought, they could resist beetle infestations, because they were healthy. About 45 years ago, we imposed laws that have made the management of our forests virtually impossible. We've seen an 80% decline in timber harvesting off of the federal forests in those years. And the result is those forests are now densely overcrowded. Trees that once had plenty of room to grow are now fighting for their lives against other trees for the same ground. And in that stress condition, they can no longer resist stressors like drought and beetle infestation and disease. And so they're dying. And it has now become catastrophic. I think after 45 years of these environmental laws being in place, with the sole promise that they would improve the environment of our forests, I think we're entitled to ask, how's the environment of our forests doing? And the answer is absolutely devastating. Laws that have not only failed to...
What are you going to do about it? We all know this is true. What are you actually going to do about it? You haven't proposed any legislation to increase funding for the headwaters? You haven't proposed any legislation
on the contrary. Last year, and again, just yesterday, I introduced legislation that would provide $300 million for us to take down the dead timber that's there before it burns.
And sell it for profit.
And we can't sell it for profit. It's totally worthless. Once you have, though, we need to start managing our forests so that the remaining acreage doesn't fall victim to the same forces and we will repay that money through the sale of surplus timber as we thin these forests back down to healthy levels.
So chop down the forest to save it.
Yeah. Chop down the forest.
Thanks. Hi, Shirley Boozer from Lincoln, California. I've known you to, thank you for being here. I've known you to.
You guys have been so nice to thank me for being here. And I know we have these long disagreements. I seriously thank all of you for being here.
Thank you.
So, and we're going to be continuing this dialogue for many, many months as we go down this path.
So one comment, one question. I'm encouraged to hear the appointee for the head of the VA is not for privatizing the VA. So I want to put a shout out for our local VA in Northern California is outstanding. Please don't mess with it. Secondly, I know you've always been fiscally very responsible and conservative. Can you support, or how can you support spending billions on a wall that will be completely ineffective?
The cost of the wall is about $8 to $12 billion. That is a lot of money, but the cost of illegal immigration, net cost, is estimated to be about $100 billion.
It's a lie.
And ultimately, I do it as an issue of national security, and I've always agreed with Ronald Reagan that national security is not a budget issue.
On the National Security Council, he's identified himself as an enemy of the state. He wants to destroy the state, as in the United States of America. How can you say you care about national security?
Next question.
Good. But she didn't ask you to answer.
Again, my name is Rachel, and I appreciate you being here today. I would like to ask you, given this extraordinary time we're living in with Trump as president, and that we all have so many concerns, people in your district, can you please commit to us that you will come back here to the district, to this same hall, in fact, or maybe even a larger one, at least once a month, so that we can give you, what our concerns are, because you are our representative.
Yeah, I come back to this district every week, and I try to hold at least one public meeting someplace in the district.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
And by the way, that's a huge help to me because, yes, of course I commit. I've done over 100 of these live town hall meetings, and I think now close to 60 or 70 teletown hall meetings, so that people who can't get to a hall like this can still participate. So, yes. Oh, yeah, well, once a month. I can't commit to being. My district office, by the way, is in Roseville, so I mean this is the population center of the district. But remember, the district goes all the way from Truckee in Nevada County all the way down to Fresno County. In fact, we have about 3/4 of the land area of Fresno County. So it's a big district. So I try to get to as many communities as I can. I've been here, done town hall meetings like this in Roseville many times. Part of it is to respond to demand. There's obviously a high demand here right now, so I'll be back soon.
Thank you.
And again, I thank you guys for coming here and advising me, even when we don't disagree. It gives me lots of input. It makes me think, and I hope that maybe some of the things I say make you think as well.
Think about 2018. And you work for us.
Yes, I take that very seriously.
We have another question over here.
Yes, we are listening to you. In fact, in 2009, you gave a speech entitled Inconvenient Questions, and you still have it posted. It's still floating around. In it, you made fun of climate scientists derisively questioning what is settled science about human-caused climate change. But here is an inconvenient truth. Most of Earth's atmosphere is within 10 miles of the surface of the planet, and we've been dumping carbon into this 10-mile envelope. That's not even to Antelope. I mean, that's not even to downtown. And yet, for the last 150 years, we've been dumping intense amounts of carbon. And the oceans are getting so acid already that we can't even grow shellfish without dumping in, extra chemicals now because the babies can't form shells because it's so acid. So the new study is out showing that waters are possibility that they'll rise 8 feet or more in the next 80 years. So I have 2 questions for you. Are taxpayers going to have to pay to move all of the petrochemical industrial plants from the shores where they currently are in order to facilitate shipping? So all of these companies, oil companies, chemical companies, Monsanto, all these companies have massive industrial complexes right along the shoreline. And number one, are taxpayers going to be left holding the bag so that all of the chemicals don't get dumped into the ocean over the next 80 years?
Okay.
And the second question is, are
I'm
you going
not
to...
clear. What
It was the last report put out by our own government.
Okay, and
So you'll have to look that one up. I can get it to your office.
Okay, I
if you need
appreciate
it.
that.
Okay, so 8 feet by the end of this century. And so we are going to have, especially the state of Florida and along our shoreline, the Gulf Coast, we're going to have a lot of climate refugees in the next 80 years to manage. I have 3 grandkids and 5 great-grandkids, and they are all going to be terribly impacted by these refugees, our own refugees. So how do you intend to deal with this? Our climate scientists, I mean, you don't believe 98% of the scientists in the world. What the heck is that about?
That's a lie.
Well, first of all, 98% of the scientists say no such thing. And even if they did, science is not. You know, Lincoln once, somebody yelled right out to Lincoln. Folks, wait a second. I thought we were going to have an adult discussion here.
We're still waiting.
So let's have a discussion among Americans. We're all in the same boat together. We can all learn from each other as long as we're not shouting at each other.
We have no
But
microphone.
let me go back to the central core of your question. You go look in any scientific arena, you are seeing a very, very vigorous debate over the extent to which man-made carbon dioxide emissions are causing global warming. The source of my skepticism. The source.
Boardrooms of the petrochemical companies.
Folks, again, let's be courteous to one another.
Not courteous to lie.
I have a response. Yeah.
This is about your children and
I
grandchildren,
do,
not just
I do.
ours.
And let me I'll put it in a nutshell. The planet has been warming. It has been warming since the last ice age. Whether or not we destroy our economy for our children, our planet is going to continue to warm and cool as it has for billions of years.
Mr. McClintock, you have previously opposed the debt limit increase and voted vociferously against it several times. Just a couple of weeks ago, you voted to increase it by $10 trillion, 50% increase.
Where was this?
This was the debt limit increase on January.
You're talking about the budget.
The debt limit increase.
Yeah. That was the budget. I voted no. I was one of 9 Republicans who voted no.
Okay. Well, then,
come on. Let's.
Well, no. I mean, I read in the paper where it said 100% of the House of Representatives and Senate voted, or Republicans, and passed it. And that's what I read in the paper. So,
you're correct that a budget was passed, which
increase the debt limit,
which would continue. It doesn't increase the debt limit. What it does is to continue a spending trajectory that will add $10 trillion more to our debt over the next 10 years, and I voted no.
Okay. Well, then, So you just said that you're going to spend $10 billion for a wall.
And save $100 billion a year on
right. And you said that you're going to increase the. How about Trump's $1 trillion infrastructure program? Are you for that one as well?
I actually gave a speech on the House floor in December of how I believe we could do $1 trillion of infrastructure spending without spending a single dime of taxpayer money, and that includes things like getting the government out of the way. Keystone Pipeline, for example, the Dakota Pipeline. We have one official in the Army Corps of Engineers office in Sacramento who is holding up tens of millions of dollars of local infrastructure projects. Multiply that across the country, and that's an awful lot of pent-up infrastructure spending that I think is going to be unleashed in the next few months. Now, in addition to that, I am about to put in legislation that will allow the federal government to use revenue bonds in order to finance major capital projects. A revenue bond is not backed by the taxpayers. Revenue bonds, by the way, are how we finance the State Water Project, how we finance the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. Those are bonds where we identify the beneficiaries. In the case of, let's say the Golden Gate Bridge. Said, we're going to build this bridge. It's going to carry this amount of traffic. The traffic's going to generate tolls. Through the tolls, we plan to pay back your loans. Will you loan us the money? So taxpayers were never on the hook for a dime. We actually paid back those loans early, but it's not borrowed from the taxpayers or backed by the taxpayers. And the other thing is, restoring our highway taxes for our highways would mean a lot of additional infrastructure construction in highways. So, I mean, there are a lot of things can be done to dramatically increase infrastructure spending without increasing the burden on taxpayers. What's that?
You're going to increase taxes, correct?
No, it doesn't require any tax increase.
Just tolls.
Tolls aren't taxes, right?
Tolls are free, right?
I want to thank you for your very thoughtful vote against rescinding the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
Well, again, this was actually, this was the budget that set in motion the reconciliation process. And what I've been warning about is using reconciliation bypasses the 60-vote threshold for cloture in the Senate. And I have warned the leadership, and I continue to warn them, that could end up leaving us with an even more dysfunctional system than we currently have.
Thank you. And I would like you to continue to be thoughtful, thinking of the future, looking at the past, being willing to stand up to your peers, because I think this current president has made some very impulsive actions. I do not think what he is doing is sound for the economy. I don't think destabilizing the Mexican economy will help. I think the Russian government leadership is corrupt. I'm afraid he's putting us in danger of nuclear war. I want you to continue to be thoughtful, continue to stand up. I do think there's a good chance he will be impeached. And we need you to be stable through that process and thoughtful and not allow these impulsive appointments and actions to continue. Thank you.
Call on a man, please. Call on a man. Call on a man, please. Yeah, find a gentleman instead of a man. Just called on that. All right. He won't let you have it. Thank you. Sure.
I want to personalize the ACA. My name is David Emerson. That's spelled E-M-E-R-S-O-N. I live in Lincoln. I'm a retired college professor on a very limited income. 53 years ago, this gorgeous young woman agreed to marry me, and we've been married ever since, unlike our president. 10 years ago, my wife had 2 open-heart surgeries. She now lives with 2 artificial valves in her heart. She is on a great deal of medication, and the ACA helps us to get that medication. If you cancel the ACA without putting a viable alternative in there on my fixed income, we will not be able to afford the medication that she now takes, and she will die. Her name is Judy, Judy, same last name, Emerson. If you vote to cancel the ACA and you see her name in an obituary, shame on you.
And Mr. Emerson, again, I want to make it very clear. I have been pressing very hard this point. When Obamacare is replaced, it must be replaced with something that improves the medical coverage for the vast majority of Americans.
So you'll vote no if there isn't something. So you'll vote no? You're going to vote no with no plan?
And we will be judged on the effectiveness of that replacement.
So we can count on a no vote if there's no plan.
Hi, Congressman McClintock. My name is Julia Sweeney. I was born and raised in Roseville, California. I was a middle school teacher, so I'm going to go ahead and give you some feedback about how to have a discussion. One of the things I always told my students is that you have to first acknowledge what you are hearing from the other side so that they know they are being heard. And throughout this entire process, I have not heard you once acknowledge the fear, the pain, the real stuff that people are going through in this room. So before I even get to my question, I'd like to know that you hear this room and that the dialogue is not just a show up and listen to me at my town hall, but rather, you know what, I want to hear your struggle. Tell me specifically what I can do. So I'm going to give you that chance before I ask my question.
Thank you, and I'll take that opportunity. Again, I understand all of the fears that have been expressed. Again, many of us had similar fears throughout the Obama administration. We disagreed with Obama just as vigorously as you disagreed with Donald Trump. But my responsibility is to exercise the best judgment that I can on behalf of my constituency. That means listening to them, considering their views very carefully, which is why I have these meetings, and then exercising my best judgment and returning to them to answer for it.
So what I heard when you said that was that you devalued pain and fear in this room because
I've been there.
Okay, so this is good. You're getting some feedback. So not on the contrary, I'm telling you what I am hearing from you. And what I heard there was that you devalued my experience because you only focused on your experience with Obama. And so one thing that, this is a good lead up to my question because I'm very concerned about this Muslim ban. And so it's kind of a multi-part question. So first I want to make sure that you are aware that there was a hate crime here in Roseville this week.
I am. It was despicable, disgraceful, and cowardly.
So I didn't hear a big comment or I didn't see a press release or anything on your website saying solidarity with them.
You just heard that.
So what I want to know is what are we going to do? Because I don't really think we can call this, the timing is what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a coincidence. So You know, what are you going to do when the actions, the rhetoric, all of these crazy decisions are emboldening hate crime, are making people that should have religious freedom be afraid, feel unwelcomed? If you were so concerned that we need to stop immigration, you would stop everyone. My family coming over from Ireland would be stopped at the border. But you're not stopping the Irish. You're not stopping the Canadians. You are targeting Muslim countries. And so when you say that there is no constitutional right to the entrance of the United States, I say fine. But there is a constitutional right to freedom of religion. And the targeting of these Muslim countries is unacceptable. What are you going to do here in our 4th district to make sure that every Muslim, every American, every non-American who's just visiting even feels welcome, safe, and validated in this area? And 2, what are you going to do to stop this progressing, the demolition of our values? So those are my 2 questions, and I hope you improve as we continue this dialogue.
Let me just say that the government should take no note of an individual's religion. That is a very personal thing that's between them and their conception of their God. And our constitutional and our Constitution acknowledges that in a sense in the First Amendment. However, often attached is a very poisonous political ideology, Sharia law, that is antithetical to our Constitution. There are a lot of people, a lot of Muslims fleeing this oppressive ideology. And they should be welcome in this country at assimilable levels. But those who are coming here to impose that ideology have no right to enter, and we have every right and every reason to refuse their entry.
But Tom, Garden City, Kansas, we had terrorists in the United States. I want to know what you're doing to stop Christian terrorists inside the United
Go ahead, world's greatest grandpa.
Oh, thank you very much, Congressman. A couple of things about Affordable Care Act. First of all, I commend you, one, for being here, and secondly, for your honesty. You express your honest opinions even when we disagree. Except on the Affordable Care Act, you've talked about this plan and how you're interested in something replacing the Affordable Care Act. On your website and on Facebook, in fact, I read it this morning, you talked about your Republican associates not agreeing to an up or down vote on the Affordable Care Act, that you wanted a straight vote, and that what you wanted to return health care to the free market. Now, would you agree, because at least you're being honest, would you agree that the Republicans, for the last 6 years and now, do not have a plan? There is no plan. And in fact, you and others cannot agree because you, for instance, want to have it on the free market. There is no such plan. Let me also finally add, would you also agree that stoking fear of Muslims, them against us, Christians against Muslims, and I would add Bannon taking Jews out of the Holocaust remembrance announcement, is irrational, it's counterproductive, it plays into the hands of ISIS, and there is more chance of your constituents being hit by lightning or killed by a drunk driver leaving this theater than ever encountering a Muslim terrorist. If you're going to ban whole countries, ban England. Because after all, the shoe bomber was born in England. And let me indicate, by the way, my name is John M. Poswell. I was born in England. I'm an immigrant. I'm also listed in Best Lawyers of America. I've also practiced before the United States Supreme Court defending the Constitution.
Thank you.
And when I say John M. Oswald, the M stands for Muhammad.
On the Affordable Care Act, I actually had that discussion with Paul Ryan just a few weeks ago in a conference meeting, and we do have a number of plans. I've endorsed two of them, the Plan as well as the Republican Study Committee plan. I think they will offer far better health coverage to far more people than is available today.
Based on what?
When you look at, and again, I don't want to. As I said, everybody's already formed an opinion on Obamacare. The last 4 elections were heavily decided by their own experience with Obamacare. The people have spoken. But
Then why didn't you
in
get
order
elected
for
twice?
us to enact a plan, we have to agree also on a strategy, and that's where we've broken down, and that's because of the use of reconciliation, which I think is a very poor way of doing it.
6 years. 6 years, no plan.
Let me tell you exactly what I told Ryan. Ryan says, well, we have a plan. And
Where is it?
I said, no, with all due respect, we have bills, we have proposals, but we don't really have a plan until we pass a plan out of this House. So that part of your criticism, I think I accept it. It is valid, and I'm expressing for myself to speak.
My name is Letha Dawson. I'm a Roseville resident. Representative McClintock, as my representative in Congress, I want you to vote no when new laws threaten to take away women's rights to choose what to do. Secondly, I want you to stand up for the separation of church and state. America is not a Christian country. It was founded by Christians and atheists. America is a country where some people believe in religion and some people reject belief in religion. They are all Americans. Congress should not endorse a particular belief system, but rather support a moral, scientific system, one which recognizes the world as one globe and we all breathe the same air.
As you know, Congress is specifically forbidden by the First Amendment to establish religion.
Tell Betsy DeVos that.
We've got time for a couple more questions.
Thank you, Congressman. Rich Stewart, Roseville, California. First of all, so you know what it looks like from here. It feels to me like the office of the presidency is being kind of taken over with a power grab, power being consolidated, not necessarily having good advice on his shoulder. I called your office a couple of weeks ago and I asked a specific question. That is your Washington office. Forgive me, I'm a little nervous. Trying to get a yes/no answer. And I kept getting, I was asking specifically about support for Bannon as Trump's right-hand man. And your surrogate from Washington was very good. They said, the congressman supports Mr. Trump's picks for his cabinet and his support people, and the congressman has complete confidence in Mr. Bannon. So my yes/no question that I was trying to get answered was, do you support a xenophobe in office as the president's right-hand man and a white supremacist on the National Security Council?
Okay,
can you answer me yes or no?
I'd have to answer with a question. That is, what has Steve Bannon said that...
Steve Bannon has been on the record through Breitbart and other...
No, what has he said that leads you to call him a white supremacist?
it's obvious in the way he talks.
No. What has he said? I mean, that's a pretty serious point.
Okay. All right.
What has he said?
Forgive me, sir. I'm a little nervous right
I
now.
understand, but if you're going to call somebody a white supremacist, you need to tell me what is it that he said that leads you to call him a white supremacist.
Forgive me. I didn't prepare a quote, but I'm thinking of.
Well, I've asked that question a lot when this issue come up, and nobody has ever given me a quote.
So, let me ask you then. Would you support a xenophobe as Donald Trump's right-hand man or a white supremacist on the National Security Council?
Yes. I would not support such a person for
Thank you
any
very much.
office of trust in the United States. And I don't believe that either of those descriptions applies to Steve Bannon.
Thank you, Congressman McClintock, for being here. My name is Ricardo Yano, and I'm a constituent from zip code 95661. I have too many concerns to enumerate in person, but I have been calling so your DC staffers may recognize my voice. I'm here to talk about our President, Donald Trump, and the role that you, Congressman McClintock, have in safeguarding our democracy. Election year bluster is irrelevant at this point, as is my opinion about whether or not Mr. Trump is a good or a bad person. What matters now are the president's actions. I love our nation, our Constitution, and our democracy, and President Trump's authoritarian actions in his first days in office have been very troubling to me. Any president of our United States shall uphold their solemn oath to defend and protect the Constitution, at which point the president violates the Constitution, ignores the rule of law, makes a travesty of the separation of powers, and runs roughshod over our system of checks and balances. It is your duty, Congressman McClintock, to defend liberty by impeaching and removing the president from office. This is not a controversial statement. It is the role Congress is laid out in the Constitution and in every civics course in the land. I believe that President Trump has already committed impeachable offenses and that he will continue to commit impeachable offenses. Congressman McClintock, defender of liberty, I ask that you put your country over your party, defend our Constitution and our republic, and make preparations to remove this dangerous man from the office of the president. My question to you is, what is an impeachable offense? Thank you.
The Constitution says a high crime or misdemeanor. He's been in office 2 weeks. I haven't seen any high crimes or misdemeanors. Let me give you one very bright line that I do draw, and that is the president's war powers. The Constitution is very clear. The president wages war, but Congress and Congress alone declares it. I stood with a number of Democrats in opposition to Barack Obama's unprovoked attack on Libya. I believe that is a bad line. I think that was impeachable. So that is, that's the look that I see as a high crime and misdemeanor. That's what I see.
You know it doesn't.
As an example.
You know it doesn't.
Emolument.
This lady has a question.
Stand up.
She has a question.
Stand up and walk over there. From Bannon for you.
Yeah, let her
Yes,
go.
we
Yeah, this
all
lady
want
has a
to.
question.
Yes, a quote from Bannon.
Okay, I just did a little search here and among a lot of quotes. He was interviewed with Mother Jones. I gotta find it again, but it was basically. I have it. It was about.
Come on.
Hang on.
We'll
wait.
I'll be hanging around for a little bit.
Representative McClintock, we are the indivisible constituents of District 4. We will not support or vote into office any representative who does not uphold our constitutional freedoms and values. We stand united as one district, indivisible, demanding liberty and justice for all. If you won't respect the values of your constituency, we pledge to find someone who will.
My question pertains to the authoritarian style in which Donald Trump
is now running our government. And I would like to give two very specific recent examples. Number one, the executive order to ban immigration ban. Typically, and this is true historically of Democrats and Republican presidents, they have followed a particular protocol. And let me explain the protocol. Number one, the president and his advisors confer, that means discuss with, the agencies that will be responsible to implement those actions. Number two, the president and his advisors research all the effects, peripheral effects, immediate effects, and unintended consequences. Number three, the executive order is looked at by constitutional lawyers to be sure that this is legal. Donald Trump did not follow that protocol. He rolled out his immigration ban on very short notice, even to his immediate advisors. They knew about it, but they did not. The agencies were not involved in the discussion. So he's not following protocol. He's steamrolling over his own advisors and over this whole way of doing things. Okay, let me finish. Okay, the second one, this recent attack in Yemen. Again, there is a protocol. Normally, the president and his advisors meet in the situation room, and they look at the risks, and they look at the potential collateral damage. They didn't do that either. The attack on Yemen was decided at a dinner. They didn't go into a situation room. They didn't assess the risks. Yes.
Attack on Yemen. What?
Just explain.
Where have you been?
Did I say the wrong country?
He just doesn't know about it.
Let me finish my point. We killed children because they did not assess the risk. Now, I was absolutely appalled by the response from the White House about the killing of innocent people and children, the collateral damage. Yeah. Well, we're defending our American interests. It does not defend our American interests when we kill innocent people. All it does is rally ISIS against us. Yeah. So, hold on.
Has it your attention that it's been going on for 8 years under the prior
administration? No, he went through the protocol. He followed the protocol.
And the Navy SEAL was
yeah, but you're right. I mean, there was collateral damage in other administrations too. I acknowledge that. Okay, my question to you is, do you have any concerns about this authoritarian style of Donald Trump's government? And are you willing to go on record today in front of all these people that you have no fear that we are colliding or we are sliding into a dictatorship? Because that's the fear I have.
With Putin's brother.
The answer to the question is no. I have no such fear because of the strength of our Constitution. Now, the criticisms that you of the rollout of the executive order, I think are perfectly valid. I think he would argue that, well, yeah, I don't have my Attorney General because that's been stalled in the Senate. I don't have my Director of OMB who's responsible for dealing with these executive orders, and actually assessing them, doing the vetting that you mentioned, because it's been stalled in the Senate. I don't have my team. I don't have much of a team in place yet. So, but let me go back to the broader point.
Don't put American lives at risk.
The Constitution itself. We have three branches, each designed to check the other. And in the case of the executive order, the constitutionality is ultimately decided by the courts. A court in Washington, federal court judge in Washington, has placed a stay on the operation of that executive order. That's the appropriate way to respond through our constitutional process. I believe that judge is wrong. I believe the order is constitutional. But ultimately that's going to be decided under the constitutional process that has served our nation well for 240 years. And that's why, if I could just wrap up on that question, that is why we all need to celebrate the genius of the American Constitution, the American Republic, and the American people, who have always, whenever our country's drifted off course, have put it back on course. Now, I happen to think, as been done in the last 4 elections, you may think it's now seriously off course. But however we differ on our opinions, as long as we are talking with each other rather than shouting at each other, our country's going to come through this just fine. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you being here today.